Well, here we are. Good morning, good afternoon. Welcome to an Execs in the Know conversation, and I hope everyone's doing well. The good news is I've brought some friends along, and we've got a great conversation we've got planned. My name's Chad McDaniel. I'm president and co-founder of Execs in the Know. And I was interested in, I was looking at the attendee list. We had, I think, 200 people register for today's discussion. And there's a good number of you that I know and have been community members with us over the years. I can't call everyone out based on the number of people, but I just want to say thank you. I hope you're doing well. It's good to see you. Thank you for participating and just sending my personal regards. I've got a couple of setup slides I'd like to go through as we get started. And I really want to make sure that today's conversation is very authentic, genuine, and real. We're going to get into some of the details of the discussion, and I look forward to it. So the schedule is going to be, we have an hour together. I'm going to make the most of it. I'm really going to push our panelists towards critical thinking, design, and strategy. We'll have some Q&A towards the end. So anything we're talking about today, please make note or put it in the Q&A box. That would be fantastic. And I'll make sure that we get to that towards the end of the session. So look forward to your questions. I also want to say we had a couple of weeks ago, we were able to get live in Clearwater, Florida. It was an amazing event. I don't know if you've seen some of the posts on LinkedIn, but really a fascinating experience to be together as a community. If you weren't able to get with us in Clearwater, I would strongly suggest you join us in San Diego, Coronado at the Dell. We're going to be there October 24th, 26th. This is our live summit. It's about 200 people gathered in a very informative think tank kind of way. We put people to work, and Heather knows we put people dancing and all these other things, but it's a great opportunity to come and share with a bunch of leaders. In the console, there should be a resource box that you see. I've asked Gina, our Vice President of Marketing, to place a link in there where we put a blog together from Clearwater. There's some great read about lessons learned and takeaways from our speakers. We were very, very blessed to have some amazing speakers and content at that session. So if you get a chance, do take a look at that link to the blog and have a nice read about what some of the discoveries were. For you that are new to Execs in the Know, welcome. Execs in the Know has been a passion of mine and Susan's over the last 15 years. Really, we are a corporate CX sharing community at the executive level. We call it Leaders Learning from Leaders. We have real conversations, unscripted, unfiltered, but it's really in a total sharing environment. And there's lots of ways to get involved. Just simply go to our website, execsintheknow.com, and look at the Knowledge Center tab, look at the Events tab, look at the Community tab. The bottom line is, for our corporate CX leaders out there, you do not need to go alone at this. There's many, many ways to get involved with hundreds of others in our community. We have a great board. These boards are leaders within the respective industry, their organizations, but also our industry. Just a shout out. Thank you for their guidance, their love, their support, and everything doing. And Jim, you're on our board, and I know you're part of today's conversation. So Jim, we expect more from board members. So the conversation has got to be really good coming from Jim at Nordstrom, but I know it's going to be fantastic. One last thing I just want to say before we move into some quick introductions is for our corporate listeners today, if you haven't joined our private online community, this is basically 24/7, again, where you can reach hundreds of other executives. We have very rich conversations that are very commercial-free, vendor-neutral, very honest, very sincere, and I would encourage you to join the online community. The conversations are on steroid. It is just a fantastic way to ask questions and get from your peer group some of the most pressing things. So enough about Execs in the Know. Welcome. Thank you for your time. It's a pleasure to have you here, and let's get started. So I've worked hard to assemble some panelists. They got corralled into this. Thank you for your loving support and your willingness to help the community. Ricardo, I'd like to start with you, and I want to just say, Ricardo, I was really pleased to have someone like you join this discussion today because of your background. You have a fascinating background in retail. some of the things you've done with your podcast, your retail technology, just the insights. You have lived and breathed the retail space in so many ways over the years. Now, obviously, with Microsoft. Give our audience just a quick introduction and background, and then we'll move on.
Yeah, well, thank you for that introduction. I hope I can live up to the the standard that you set there. But yeah, I have been kind of living and breathing the retail world for, I'd say, the better part of the last 2 decades, basically on the retail tech side. So I have always been with a technology organization of some kind, sometimes actually delivering the technology to the retailers, sometimes delivering managed services around the technology. But fundamentally, my role has always been around identifying the right technology solutions to solve business challenges for retailers and to make sure they get the most value out of that investment. And as you noted, I have a podcast that goes into details around retail tech and what's happening there. And it's interesting that retail technology, once upon a time in retail, it basically meant point of sale. But of course, that evolved, and now I don't think there's any area of retail operations that isn't touched in a significant way by technology, and that not just in a way of making things more productive for retail employees operationally, but also just impacting customer experience overall. And that's really where I've spent quite a bit of time in focusing on how technology can help make that customer experience better.
Well, quick shout out, Richard, for all of our listeners. When you get a chance, go on LinkedIn, look up Ricardo, on LinkedIn, and look at his background, maybe put a request to connect. But Ricardo, it's a pleasure to have you, and thank you very, very much for today's session. Jim, I want to turn to you. Jim, you've been such a force in our community over the years. A lot of our community knows who you are. I love your leadership, your passion for this industry. I mean that all sincerely, Jim. Thank you, and thank you for your time today. A quick introduction for those that may not be familiar with you.
Absolutely, and thank you, Chad. It's a pleasure to be here, and thank you for the opportunity. So my name is Jim Gallagher. I've been in the customer support industry for my entire professional career, I guess. Spent just shy of 20 years at Microsoft as well, so it's good to have some familiar friends here. The last 3 years, I've been the Vice President of Customer Care and Fraud here at Nordstrom. And so I'm delighted to be here and looking forward to the conversation today. Thanks, Chad.
Well, thank you. And we have the unique honor and pleasure of Heather, who apparently you're her boss at Nordstrom. I hear you're quite a dynamic boss. Heather, I'm not going to make any 360 evaluations today. We do that at the live summit. But Heather, thank you. And for the audience, maybe what area of responsibility that you have at Nordstrom?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Chad and team, for inviting me here today. So I have been with Nordstrom just at the 2-year mark, started in the heart of COVID, literally, and have spent the last 2 years supporting all of our customer-facing contact centers for the Nordstrom Rack, and Trunk Club brands, and just really developing the work-from-home operations and how we can best support our customers in a digital remote environment. Prior to Nordstrom, I too have spent about the last 20 years or so in customer service contact centers, supporting the majority of retail brands, but also at the very beginning of my career, dabbled in some travel and tourism at the Disney company. So really excited to be here and be with such great company on this call.
Awesome. And I know Jim and Heather, quick shout out to both of you. Everyone listening to today's call, we want each of you to go spend $100 at Nordstrom within the next week. And let's make sure we support our friends and family at Nordstrom. But thank you, Jim and Heather, for your time. Seb, great to see you again. We've had the pleasure of working in the past, and this is an Execs in the Know conversation and community, but I really wanted to bring Nuance part of this conversation because you've been great partners to the community, have great products and rich experiences. But Seb, I know you could help keep some things honest, you could keep things very balanced, and give us a lot of mini case studies as we get into the conversation. So quickly introduce yourself for the audience that may not be familiar with you.
Sure, Chad. Hi, everyone. So Sebastian Reeve. I look after market development for Nuance. We're specialists in the customer experience space, and that's where I spent, like everyone else on the panel, most of my career, about 25 years or so, has been in customer service or customer experience, and working out where technology transects that industry to the better good of brands. So I've spent the last 12 have been at Nuance, and breaking news, there are two Microsofties on the panel, because 3 weeks ago we were acquired by Microsoft. So we're busy over the last 3 weeks and into the future now, putting our great solutions together to figure out how we can benefit the brands we serve even further. So it's really exciting time for all of us. So thanks for having me, Chad. Appreciate it.
Well, thank you, and great job, team. We only spent 10 minutes in the proper introductions and overview. Let's get into the teeth of the conversation and let's get going, because our time will go fast. You know, we have plenty to talk about, audience. You know, I think about social commerce, fraud, authentication, delivery pickup, returns, the use of streaming in video, and I've kind of created 7 sections for today's conversation. We're going to go each section one by one and kind of dive into it. I've brought a chart I'd like to bring up here, and I would encourage, this came from our recent 2022 corporate report. This was just released from Execs in the Know last month, late March. And a little background to the reports. Every year, Execs in the Know, we place out there, I guess, a consumer edition report and a corporate findings report. You can go to our website, go to the Knowledge Center. You can find all of these previous editions. I think Gina has placed in the resource section. Download. This is the book. It's a great overview. There's some fantastic information. I would go down there and download it. We also had 10 brands participate in their findings or their review of this. And what the corporate report is a large group of corporates that have completed a survey to get to the roll-up data. Okay, so that's the background on the report. The question here was, how would you describe the ongoing impact of the COVID-19 pandemic in the internal CX operations? A lot of you, I think, can relate to this. And Jim, I was thinking on this chart, the 23% that said almost no challenges persist, or the 6% no challenges persist. I want to go work for that company. Whoever on the corporate side placed that there. But neither here or there, there's still 59 as some challenges persist. And when we think of challenges, you know, this is with recruitment, employee retention, employee engagement, you know, very labor related, but it also has got training and it's got some technology challenges. Ricardo, just coming from the outside of this, before I get into section 1 about labor, and it doesn't need to be retail agnostic in the sense, but as we sort of think about the shifting dynamics in our CX operations, you know, 59% of us are saying that some of these challenges still persist. Is that consistent to what you're seeing, or would you say it a little bit differently or have a different viewpoint?
Yeah, I would say it's pretty consistent. I mean, you know, some of the top things I hear, you know, of course, from retailers in particular, right, is that a lot of the challenges that surfaced during the pandemic, they still linger. What changes is how consumers are perhaps perceiving those challenges from their perspective, right? Has it changed? Is it a little different? Is it resulting in slightly modified shopping behaviors? I think those are some of the ways that these challenges are kind of surfacing now for retailers. I'll be curious to hear, Jim, what you think of that part as well. But from my perspective, you know, there's more and more desire to leverage technology in a way that can address these challenges, perhaps than before. You know, coming from the technology side, you know, one of the things that is, I guess I have to admit, a positive, right, from my perspective, is that there's more willingness in the industry to spend more budget on technology to be used in the right ways to kind of solve a lot of these business challenges, where in the past, a lot of these projects would get put off and delayed because there just wasn't enough budget to handle them, even if the understanding was there that they needed to be addressed. I think one of the biggest lessons, and I think this is true even beyond retail, from the pandemic, is that projects that used to be seen as needing to take 6 months to complete, you know, people realize in the pandemic, you can get these things done in 6 weeks. And part of the reason you can get them done in 6 weeks versus 6 months is because you don't need to wait for 100% completion to put it out in a customer facing way. You probably need something like 85, 90%, just enough so that it meets the need. And certainly during the pandemic, I think consumers maybe had a slightly scaled back need in some of these areas. So there was more of an acceptance of, if I can get something along this need from a retailer, then that's great. I'll stick with them, versus one who can't deliver anything at all, as compared to the 100% mark. So I think that lesson was invaluable both for retailers and I think even in other industries, is that you don't have to wait for that 100%. It's okay to be 80% of the way there and get it done in 6 weeks, and then maybe take another 4 weeks after that to iterate a few times on that solution and get it a little bit better each step. Make some incremental improvements that way, but you don't have to take 6 months to get that done.
I think that's a brilliant point, Ricardo. We certainly see that A/B testing is way more prevalent than it ever was in the past. And, I think your point around iteration is key. Like, get it out in the marketplace, get it out there fast, and then build upon it versus, we had projects that were celebrating birthdays before we get out in front of the public. Now it's weeks. And so I love that point. And, I think I'd also say the pandemic has done a whole bunch of things for us. And one of the things that I think about is that customers' habits and expectations of the digital and physical retail experience have dramatically changed, and they're not going back. And so, I laugh a little bit. I know we were just all face to face recently, but we've talked for many, many years as professionals in the CX space about transforming customer experience and what technology we're going to bring in, and it's been such a slow roll. But the pandemic did it in 2 years. And so there's so many new experiences and new digital expectations that customers have as soon as they engage with the brand. And so it's moving fast for sure.
Well, Heather, you're going to say something?
Yeah, no, I was just going to agree with Ricardo and Jim, but one caveat to that is that I think after the fast implementations and the divergence from the slow roll, it's important to go back and reevaluate once we get to that point that we're at now. That's kind of like that baseline, right? Now that we're all able to breathe and we're not in quote unquote crisis mode and we're just getting back to some state of normal, it's important to go back and make sure that those things that were rolled out quickly truly are sustainable for the future and the right things to do, right? And so I feel like now is that time to do that reevaluation process and continue to build on what works. And maybe, there might be some things that didn't work out so great that we rolled out quickly that we need to take a look at. So I think that's an important piece of it as well.
It does feel like we challenged a lot of industry dogma in terms of things we would or wouldn't do with customers, solutions we would and wouldn't launch. But as you say, Heather, some of that dogma was there probably for a good reason. So we should all go back and maybe reestablish and test those things again. But it feels like, per your point, Ricardo, I couldn't agree more. It feels like Agile really had its day in the last 2 years, right? We started really using, we all talk about being customer driven, but we were really using data to figure out how to make change, how to launch something, how to make change and improve it quickly, which is as customer driven as it gets. It feels really good that we're talking about this for so long and suddenly we really did it. Fantastic shift in the industry, I think.
Great perspective from each of our guests. I appreciate that. So before I move off this slide again, here's the report. This is just one snippet of a book of findings from corporate brands. I would strongly encourage you to go to the Resource Center, download it, and get your free copy of the downloadable copy. So I hope you enjoy that. We work hard to put those things together. All right, so with this, Seb, I want to start with you. And it was interesting. Now we're going to go section 1, labor. And labor is not anything new, as it's a challenge, it's a restraint, it's an ongoing concern. And it was interesting that this is a retail-centric discussion, I guess, with some of the guests we have today, but there's a lot of non-retailers that are going to be listening to this session. And I've always said that I think we in non-retail have a lot we can learn from the retailers. They always seem to be very savvy. They seem to be at the front line of things, consumer preference and change, all sorts of things impacting them. And Seb, I wanted to start with you as we think about retail. Outside of the obvious of it's a challenge, it's a struggle, how do we kind of look at this now? Is there a new normal in retail of labor, or how they're approaching labor and looking at within their CX operations?
Oh, it certainly feels like, some of the forced upon us change that happened in the last years. It sort of feels like that has left its mark. And it's across industry learning as well. As you say, I think there's a lot to learn from retailers, but there's also a lot retailers can learn from other industries as well. But anyone operating a customer experience operation at scale felt it almost immediately 2 years ago, right? We were closing buildings, we were closing stores, it was about as big a change as you were going to get. And it forced us to change everything from, how do I buy enough laptops for people to go home and work? Because I actually do need to handle all of this contact, right? I need to talk to customers still. How am I even going to do that? So just the basics, and we saw customers, solving those kinds of problems in weeks in quite an amazing way, sourcing from all sorts of different locations just to get the equipment to the desk. But of course, it created a lot of operational challenges as well at the same time. How do I manage people when they're sitting at home? All the way through to how do I manage sort of the security side of taking payments if someone's sitting at home now rather than in my operation. So, the challenges were super broad. It felt like we solved a lot of the simpler ones. Can I take a call at home? Can I get a chat sent to home if I need to, so I can get the basics done? And then started to figure out, well, how do I meet the PCI card requirements for taking a credit card payment? And how's security going to be affected? And how do I manage my staff and manage the quality of their output? Because they're not sitting next to me anymore, right? I can't manage by proximity. So I think that's a cross-industry. A lot of that's really been a cross-industry challenge. But also in retail, of course, that closing of stores and those physical touch points for some retailers who were very wedded to that experience and weren't really kind of so invested in omni-channel. Of course, that had a seismic effect in terms of having to establish completely new procedures and processes to actually fulfill on customer needs. So, it varied, I think, across the retail industry. But as I said, I think all industries were impacted in quite a major way as well.
And Heather, I want to turn to you as a practitioner, and Seb and Ricardo, I want you to be thinking about, because I want to come next, for the audience, as we think about the need of how do we retain, how do we empower, how do we get more efficient at the agent level, what would be trends or insights that maybe you've seen? Heather, let's go to you, though, because you live this dream, you live this world. I understand at Nordstrom, you have 100% of all the care operations, probably about 1,000 FTE. Maybe there's, I don't know, what are the channels that you guys support right now?
Yeah, so we currently support email, chat, phone, and social media. Those are our primary ways that everything comes into us. But, I think in general, the uniqueness of our staffing at work at home has been a blessing and a curse all at once, right? We have the population that absolutely love being at home and, no longer having a commute. And now they're available to maybe, stay at home with some of their older children and not have to find daycare or childcare and that type of thing. So that's been huge. But then how do you balance that with, continuing to create the unique contact center culture? And I think we can spend hours, if not days, on this topic because it's top of everyone's minds. But, like I said, it's a blessing and a curse, and really understanding now that we're at a point that we're no longer just trying to wing it and understand what it means to work at home. Now we truly have the opportunity to build those same cultures. A stereotypical contact center would normally have reader boards and celebrations and all sorts of different, very stereotypical between each contact center. Now, how do we build that in the work from home environment? How do we take everything that we did in center when we had our leaders, able to walk up to someone's desk and see what they were doing and having that conversation, or, peer to peer, having the connection of, hey, I just got this call and help me talk through how you would have handled it. Or, it's now taking that and recreating it in the work from home. So I think there's a lot of really unique and fun opportunities that go into that. I think the other piece when it comes, and that comes through empowerment, right? We have to understand how we can empower our front lines to be independent leaders in their own right, to lead and take care of our customers day in and day out. And so there is that shift that when you're in the center, you do have your leaders right there and you're relying on them, to now I'm at my home one-on-one with a customer, I'm empowered to make those decisions. And how do I have those tools and resources to make those right decisions and be that ambassador on behalf of the company? There's that piece with I'll call them our legacy employees. The biggest challenge that we see with recruiting on new employees is just simply the market that's out there, that we're all looking for that same top talent, right? We all want the best of the best to represent our company and be those brand ambassadors. And at this point, we're all offering those same types of things. We're offering the ability to work from home. We're offering, different types of, hey, come work for us type incentives. And so what we're seeing is that we have people that commit to wanting to come to work for our company. And then by the time training starts, they have received another offer, maybe because our position was a more seasonal position or what have you, and they're going to that. So it's very, very, very competitive out there to get that top talent that is available amongst all of ourselves.
It's real, it's consistent, Heather, what we're hearing across the community. And I wanted to touch labor, but we're not going to make this entire conversation about labor. We have many other areas I want to address, but for our panelists, as far as before I move off the labor, and again, we've been very active, Jim, in the Kia community. That's the online community. A lot of conversations about the labor and the great points that Heather brings up. Seb or Ricardo, would there be just any last thoughts or comments? This labor thing is not going to go away, at least in the short term. Any other final comments before we move into the next section I have to get to?
I think the only thing I would add, because this is pretty consistent with things I hear from both the partners I work with and retailers, is that there's real opportunity here to find new ways to kind of leverage technology to automate a lot of the repetitive, and let's call them maybe time-consuming but yet not complex tasks that we ask a lot of the workforce to do, and providing ways to make those tasks get completed faster, more efficiently and reliably by leveraging technology. That really is, I think, the number one area I hear everyone looking for as a way to just free up more time for the workforce that you have to solve and attack the more complex customer situations. I think that's really become the critical mission, if you will.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, I saw Ricardo, a McKinsey study actually that said more than 50% of the work can be automated in retail, right? I mean, there's a lot of opportunity out there. Not that you would necessarily want to automate all of that. There's obviously the trade-off in terms of, sort of the brand experience of automating too much of the work out there. But certainly the need to kind of automate and figure out how to kind of meet the needs of the customer, meet the balance needs of the customer, and obviously, deal with the efficiency. But I think as you automate more, the challenge is obviously you start to leave kind of more meaningful work for the people in the business as well. And per Heather's point, in terms of recruitment, that virtuous circle, right? People don't want to do highly repetitive tasks that could be automated every day. That's actually not meaningful for a lot of people. So I think there is actually a virtuous circle in the automation story as well.
And we need to move on, but Seb and Ricardo, or any of the listeners, our audience, we love resources, findings, reports, anything you're seeing around the labor thoughts and challenges and just viewpoints. That's part of what we collect at the community. And Heather, keep doing what you're doing. I know it's not easy on some of those challenges, but you guys have been finding lots of good paths. So kudos to you guys. I want to move into section 2, which is going to be personalization. And again, just trying to keep with time here. We have talked a lot about the importance of personalization. It doesn't matter if you're a retailer or not, and how that works to loyalty from consumer perspective. And Seb, Ricardo, I want to start with you and a little bit of tee up here. So the use of, let's say, AI personalization and prediction has become imperative. This is what I keep hearing. Not only to address shoppers' preference I'm talking in a retail perspective now, but to boost conversions, cross sales, and upsells. And consumers, I'm a consumer. I love to shop. Retailers too. We're looking for relevant recommendations and prediction about why I may have called in. And I gave you some examples of my own experience with certain retailers online that I think they do a good job of this. So Ricardo, my question is, what kind of personalizations do you think consumers most want? What are we doing to meet some of these expectations? And we'll start there. But A, do you agree? Is it important? Has the ship already left the dock? Give us a little bit of thoughts on this.
Yeah, I think it's absolutely true. I mean, personalization is a critical thing. I think consumers, but you can pick your study, you'll find any number of studies, I think, that will show pretty high percentages of consumers that say they want a personalized experience. And I think, from a consumer behavior point of view, that makes sense, right? If you ask anyone, would you rather have an experience where no one knows anything about you and it's always the same, no matter who it is that comes in the door and what's presented to you, or would you have something where someone knows exactly what you're looking for as an individual? I think it's likely most people are going to pick the latter, no matter what it is that you're offering in that scenario. And it's kind of an inherent expectation people have in a lot of these shopping engagements. So the mission for the retailer, right, is to get it right. So there are ways to personalize. I think we've all had can probably share stories of online shopping experiences where there were recommendations at the bottom of a product page that we all scratched our head and said, well, why in the world would you recommend that given what I'm shopping for? And it all really depends on how the engines work, whether they're really AI based and how well they've been trained. And there are lots of solutions out there for that. But I think one of the fundamental things that sometimes gets overlooked in this is that it's all based on a foundation of your customer data. And what I see retailers really diving into now is taking a closer look at how much customer data do they have. And I think we all know that it's quite a large volume of data, and it's only going to grow. But how do you get the right insights from that data? And how do you clean that data? Because one of my favorite examples to talk about with this is, how do you know that a customer who made an online purchase and used an email address for that purchase, how do you match that customer when they go in store and maybe all you know about them in store is a name and a credit card number, but you don't know if that's the same person or a different person? How do you match those transactions up for a common purchase history? And then you have scenarios where someone in a household may be shopping for someone else in the household. So you see, for example, a browsing history that says they're looking at a lot of dresses online, but when they go to the store, they want to try on a men's suit. So how do you know whether this is relevant or not for that particular customer? When you start to build a personalized customer journey, do you want to send that particular customer a promotion, for example, that's going to steer them in one direction for a certain style or pattern in a category like dresses? Or do you know that this particular person is shopping for themselves and they're going to be more interested in a men's jacket? So your data is going to tell you that if you've got the right connection points within that. And so this idea of a really powerful AI-driven customer data platform, I think, is an absolute foundation now for retailers to really build off of to get that personalized journey. I think it's become more than just product recommendations. It's more about delivering to a customer the right set of product information they want, regardless of channel. And I think that's maybe the newest thing that has come about as we focus a little bit more on digital channels in the pandemic. And now people are seeing a tremendous increase in shopping back in stores, but we all want to stitch together the experience. We all want to jump from these channels, but still be recognized as the same consumer.
Thank you, Ricardo. And Jim, I'm coming to you next, and then Seb. Jim, a two-part question. From a Nordstrom point of view, how important on a scale of 1 to 10 do you feel personalization has been from a brand perspective in consumer insights?
12. So I think it is absolutely critical. I mean,
okay, so it's a 12. Okay, yeah. We'll call it a 12 on a 10-point scale. So, Jim, you don't have any data issues. You don't have any prediction issues, saying that a little bit tongue-in-cheek. But the reality is it has been a 12. From a Nordstrom point of view, Jim, the second part of the question is, again, did the pandemic change certain things of how you were forced to look at this or deal with it, or what are you guys doing in some of the discussion points that even Ricardo had brought up?
Yeah, and quite honestly, I think it's less the pandemic and more about the changing marketplace that's been evolving over the last 10, even 15 years. I mean, you think about it, I mean, even going away from retail for a second, in the gaming space, not to date myself, but my Zelda Mario Brothers character looked like everyone else's character. Personalization wasn't a thing like in gaming. And now you look at Fortnite, Call of Duty, the identities that people are creating in digital spaces. Personalization is key. It's the identity piece. You bring that into retail. There was a insider intelligence survey of 2022 retail trends recently, and they surveyed 1,700 customers. And 17% of all those customers said one of the top 3 features that they look for in retail is personalization and sizing fit. And I think that speaks to the evolution of the marketplace. Customers don't want to go just buy a generic item. They want identity. They want it, to Ricardo's point, they want to be known across their properties. When you walked into a physical store, just a couple of years ago, you saw a whole bunch of different products on the rack, but you tried it on. You went to fittings rooms. You did all that stuff to see if it was your identity and it fit. And people want that in an online experience more than ever. And so I think it's less of the pandemic and more of the changing and transforming digital marketplace that we've been in.
Good clarification. And Jim, at any time, if you have recommendations or strategies or thoughts around how we as brands can continue to, forge ahead, please put them in the Kia comments and, other things that you're so willing to share. Seb, I want to come to you in the sense of, let's say I'm a non-retailer listening to this conversation. Why should I care about personalization? Should I care about personalization, AI, personalization and prediction and intent? And from a nuanced point of view, what would be sort of your argument towards this, or some facts that say, hey, look, this is something that is on a 12-point scale or 10-point scale and is 12?
Well, I mean, just to echo the great points Ricardo and Jim already made. I mean, the statistics in terms of the percentage of the population who expect a personalized experience from a retailer is super high. So if you're really going to be customer driven, personalization has to be somewhere in your pick list of projects to work on. I think what I'd add so far is there is a sort of technology element to this, and of course there's a huge data element to this. But what we haven't discussed so far is also the design sort of element to this as well. There's a balancing act in personalization we're finding from a lot of the projects we're doing, between the sort of idea of know me, but don't scare me. So in a lot of parts of the world, and if you picked up on my accent, I'm not Australian, I'm British, right? In the UK and in Europe, we have quite stringent privacy regulations now. So how you use my data and what I give you permission to do is more and more important in the minds of consumers. And that's an important topic in this personalization side as well. So it's balancing between know me, but really don't overdo this.
It's a tough one. It's a tough balance, though. It's a tough balance.
It's a very tough balance, and each consumer would have a different point at which they set the bar, right? Some people will personalize it. If you want to predict my intent and you want to make this interaction, this buying process more frictionless, then great, go ahead. You can use any data you like to do that. And in some parts of the world and with some consumers, that's not the way they feel at all. So I think you have to apply the kind of the right balance and the right approach for certainly for anyone who's operating globally in different markets, but also design thinking in terms of how you bring that personalized experience to the customer. So you have a recommendation, but if I don't have a huge amount of trust in a brand, or it's a brand I've not done, I've only worked with a few times, and suddenly you say, here's exactly what you're calling about, right? And it's very purposeful in the way it's presented, that actually can freak a lot of users out. Right, so you have to be subtle in terms of the way you present those kinds of predictions, so you're not being overconfident about how much you know on presenting the information about how much you know about the user, because it would tend to kind of put them off a little bit. And imagine walking past a store and getting a notification to say, "Hey, walk back 10 paces. We've got a great offer for you." Right? That's a little bit freaky.
Yeah.
So you may have the data to do it, but you probably shouldn't. So it's that design-led approach, which I think is really important as well.
Seb, real quick, and I got to move into the next section. I have an audience poll question I really want to pull them into. Seb, if we were having this same conversation around personalization in 5 years from now, do you think as an industry, regardless of vertical, it doesn't matter what vertical area, where do you think we're going to be at this conversation in 5 years?
I've no doubt this has got quite a fast trajectory, and I think it's not just presenting recommendations, it's also the timeliness of them. So we're seeing a lot of work going on in the prediction space right now. So, if you call or chat with a brand like Nordstrom in the future, it's very likely that they're going to minimize that experience, stop asking questions about how I can help you, and know that you have an order in flight that's being delivered, know that there's some problem with the delivery, and shortcut that process to get you where you need to get to. right? I think there's already the data out there to do it. It's really now just sort of iterating in an agile way projects to start to remove those points of friction from the process using all of that great information that's out there. So I think it'll be quite transformative in a few years. You know, a lot of those onerous menus and processes we see today are going to start to really disappear.
Seb, no matter where I'm at in my maturity of this personalization, I'm listening to this. Is this something that Nuance helps with? Is this areas that you guys help support some of that knowledge and journey path and piece with?
But what we do, and I'm going to sort of wear my Microsoft hat here with Ricardo, because that's where I'm sitting now, right? As I said, we've been acquired. So collaboratively within our joint portfolios, there's a huge amount of assets for retailers to lean on, take advantage of, all the way from managing the data, unifying the data, but then also taking that into the CX space and presenting these kinds of personalized offers to customers at the right place at the right time to make that meaningful change we've just been discussing. So there's a lot of opportunity really there. So yes is the short answer.
Yeah, and Seb, anyone listening, if you go to LinkedIn, look Seb up. Seb, you're always so willing just to give advice and give suggestion. You know, no harm, no foul, but you're willing to help out and give as much subject matter expertise as you can. All right, I'm going to go to an audience poll question. We're going to talk quickly about the omni-channel and oh my God, for the last, I don't know, Jim, 10 years talking omni-channel, but you know, I think it does continue to accelerate, and I could even say within the last 4 or 5 years why that is. I think of business messaging services like SMS, WhatsApp, Google, Apple, it's increasing in popularity as for consumers. You know, I think of myself, we're all consumers too. But meanwhile, sales versus voice channels, whether it's IVR, live agent, smart speakers, also gaining ground. All this is underscored, I think, for the desire for context and continuity between those channels. So if we agree fundamentally with that, I want to go quickly to just this chart here, and then we're going to go to audience. And what this chart here, I'll just point a couple things out. This was from our 2021 consumer report. So if you go to our website, execsno.com, go to the Knowledge Center. This is where we had, I don't know, thousands of consumers complete a survey. They had to be qualified to complete the survey. But it's interesting what happens when it's forced and when it's not forced. And the thing I'll point out is over the years here, sorry if it's a bit of an eye test for everyone here, looking at 2018, 2019, 2020, 2021, you know, the good news is, Jim, we're seeing in 2021 the ability to expedite resolution through self-service and multi-channels increasing along with chosen out of convenience. So what the end thing from this particular chart, you'd have to look at the entire report for context, is those who use multi-channel by choice, these are consumers, versus being forced, have a much higher satisfaction and resolution rate. Sometimes, Jim, again, as consumers, we're forced to go into self-service, and maybe we don't really have that strategy defined as well. Jim, from a Nordstrom quick example, where are you guys at in this blend of, you know, I guess this whole omni-channel and multi-channel support, where consumers can pick and choose?
Yeah, so it's a great topic, and I'm very passionate about this one. That, you know, there are certain questions, there are certain experiences that a customer may have that are best served in one channel, right? We know that a certain question may be best for chat, or a certain question may be best for a voice conversation. But customers want to choose. And so when a company forces that channel upon a customer, it usually is a bad experience. And so from a Nordstrom perspective, like Heather mentioned earlier, we have chat, phone, email, and also our social media channels. We try to shepherd customers into the right path, but we're there for them, whichever path they choose. The important part, I believe these days, is stitching together a continuous conversation with a customer. So it doesn't matter what channel the customer comes in on. If they were phone one day and chat the next day, having a continuous conversation with them so that the agent knows and our insight knows that that's one conversation, doesn't matter channel. That's the true omni-channel experience we're trying to chase.
Yeah. And I'm going to go to Heather here in a second, Jim. That's a great point. Let's go to a quick audience poll. So audience, this is your chance. Help me out. Let's vote on this. So hopefully, Jim, can you all see the question? Okay. So Jim, everyone's welcome to vote. which of the following solutions are not currently offered by your organization, but are part of a short to near-term plans? Please collect or check as many as you can. So if everyone can just start voting, it's going to be interesting to see what we see as results. You can click as many of these out, but what are some of the thoughts and the plans? No right or wrong answers here, just trying to get a feel of where we're heading. So if we had the same conversation in 5 years, where would we be on this continuum? So I'll give you guys just a couple more seconds to vote. Hopefully everyone is voting, helping me out.
Well, while they're voting, Chad, the video chat experience is an interesting one that we could double click on. There's some spaces where video chat is really, really useful and a successful experience. And Ricardo, maybe you can speak to this. I know the Microsoft Store did a really good video chat experience when it came to the Surface devices. Like being able to show off something to a customer is a great experience. But consumers aren't always ready for it because video chat for them means two-way. And so it's an interesting thing that maybe the consumer's not ready for that technology yet, but it's around the corner. More and more customers are going to get used to it. So.
Well, I agree, and I still want to give the audience some time. Karen, I hope you voted. Alicia, I hope you voted. Eric, Mike, Marie, everyone, let's vote. Let's give an opinion on this. Seb, you're going to say something real quick.
I was just going to sort of build on what Jim said and just ask, I guess, our panelists here, who makes a call or video chats with someone and it isn't actually within a messaging conversation, right? So today, kind of WhatsApp or Apple Chat or whichever kind of platform you use, it tends to be the norm for most people to contact each other peer-to-peer using these platforms today. So I sort of wonder whether it's consumers not ready for it. We haven't quite ironed it out, the wrinkles as to whether they're ready to have the store clerk see them, for example, right? And whether they're expecting it. But I think it's become the norm for people to talk to each other now. And I think voicemail even has died, right? If you kind of look at it, we message each other. You don't tend to call or video chat people unannounced very often. You tend to message first. So if you kind of look at the sort of peer-to-peer behavior, we probably get a clue to what the future brand experience needs to look like.
For those that we've ran out of time, let's go ahead and show the results for those that participated. Sue Morse, you better have voted on my poll. I'm just having a little fun, Sue. But here's the audience thing right here. All right, so can we see the results? Jim?
We cannot see the results. I see
results.
I can see them.
Okay. So the audience can see it. I don't know if our panelists can see it. Seb, can you see the results?
I can. If you click on, there's a little link at the bottom of the survey
okay,
page.
Well, anyhow, it looks like 42% SMS text, two-way asynchronous. The followed shortly by 33% chatbot, intelligent virtual assistant. 57% of those voted video chat, live chat, 57%, and then kiosk goes down from there. I guess the real question is not that there's any particular order here. We still see 86% that said SMS text, two-way asynchronous. What does that mean to you, Seb? What does that tell us?
Well, I think interestingly, for an American audience, which this is, we see SMS come up pretty high still, right? That's not mirrored in the rest of the world. I think there's a lot of people are most interested in SMS because they're receiving a lot of notifications, but are unable to converse back with the brand if that notification generates a needed response from them. So that two-way piece is the important part, right? It's the do not reply problem, where we send text, we think we're informing the customer, but then they have a follow-on question, right? So it's being able to handle that in the same channel, so we're not forcing them to switch and figure out how to contact us another way. So I think that's why we're seeing that two-way SMS.
So Heather, let me go to you again, running that FTE direct group. We think of omni-channel. What's the most important in terms of concept, whether that's consumers want or capabilities to prioritize, or if consumers want their conversations to be connected, what are we doing with that? I mean, I get asked this question in many different ways. At the end of the day, I guess, Heather, what is the point you really want to share with the audience here and make recommendation or suggestion, or tell us about some failures possibly too?
Yeah. Well, I think, I echo some of the things that Ricardo and Jim and Seb have already said around, you have to meet the customer where they want to communicate with you. And sometimes that might be phone. Sometimes, especially at the work at home environment, it's very easy to multitask. And, I'm just going to do a quick chat over here with my bank or, regarding a package I'm waiting on. While I'm still focusing on the rest of my work. But later in the day, I have time and I'm going to pick up the phone and call, maybe on my lunch hour or whatever. So I think, meeting the customer where they want to be and when they want to be is most important. And as Jim mentioned, having that continuous conversation, whether it is via phone, chat, email, SMS, all of the different channels. The other piece that is becoming a unique challenge for Nordstrom to solve is also connecting it with the in-person piece in our stores, right? So that is our newest kind of channel to go after, is the 360 customer journey and customer view. If they're in the store, how do we connect that to conversations that they may have had with the virtual care team and vice versa? And so that is really our focus as we go into 2022 and beyond in this environment, is making sure that customer journey feels connected and that we're not the stereotypical silo of, oh no, that was in store, so you only had that conversation in store and I have no idea what you're talking about, versus, oh, you had this conversation with this agent 6 months ago and I have no record of it, right? And so that's what our customer wants. And it also links back to that personalization, right? The customer wants to feel valued and to feel like we know every piece about them and their entire journey with our company, whether it was yesterday, 2 weeks ago, 12 weeks ago, 2 years ago. And so I think that's our new unique challenge, is figuring that out and making those connections, not just in the day-to-day channels, but expanding that beyond to where the customer wants to be. And so that's what, I'll be honest, from a Nordstrom perspective, it wasn't necessarily something we focused on. We had, our great brick and mortar service, and we had our great, digital or virtual service. But now our customers want us to connect those experiences. And so that's really where we're headed and really where we're focused.
Absolutely fascinating, that 360 view, in store, out of store, online, or wherever. Ricardo, do you have any perspective, just bringing in your industry hat, for what Heather just said, that you may want to add a couple of points or suggestions or validation?
Yeah, I mean, I have to agree. I think it's not just Nordstrom looking for that kind of capability. I think most retailers that have obviously brick and mortar stores and are seeing increasing interactions through digital channels, you want to connect the dots for that customer, and the customer wants you to. I think this is one of those areas where, when we asked earlier, how much personalization do consumers want, I think this is definitely one of those areas they want to see. That if I, as the consumer, have interacted with the retailer in any given channel in the past, I want that interaction to in some way be referenceable the next time I interact, regardless of which channel that is. And I've had experience with some retailers who have tried to do this in the past in ways where, for example, they took a lot of your online behavior, whether it was a combination of purchase history and browsing history, and they made it accessible to store associates via a mobile device. Now, I think the question, and Seb kind of alluded to this a little earlier, is that for consumers, if you just walk in the door, yes, you want to be recognized and you want them to know a little bit about what your engagement has been, but you don't want to be surprised by it either. So in that scenario, if an associate, the first thing they say to you is, "Oh, hi, Chad, I see that yesterday you were browsing this wonderful product on our website." You're going to be a little surprised and shocked that they suddenly know your browsing history from yesterday, because you're not used to that. And it feels different to you as a consumer than if you had been in the store physically the day before, and it's the same associate who recognizes you and says, "Oh, did you come back because you wanted to look at that item again?" That kind of interaction you expect, because it's the same channel. But I think most consumers want this engagement to follow them from channel to channel, but the way it's executed is a little foreign to them. And so you have to kind of ease into it. So I've worked with retailers who have looked for a solution that gives the information and to store associates, makes it accessible, but you need the customer to kind of give you a prompt to make sure that it's okay to actually introduce this. So if a customer comes to you and says, "I was looking at something online that I wanted to see if you have it in the store," then you can train an associate to say, "Oh, that's great. We can look that up for you. If it's okay with you, I can pull that up on my iPad here, and we can go see where we have it in the store. That kind of engagement works for the consumer, and that makes them feel like they're engaged and involved in the process and in the journey. I think that's the solution everybody wants to work towards.
I really like Heather's point about breaking down the silos, right, between the physical and the digital, because we sort of built a brick wall between them. And the way consumers seem to behave is the channels aren't sequential. Their channel use isn't sequential always either. They're actually, what is the stat? 2/3 of the people who call you have been on your website, and 1/3 is still on your website when they're calling you, right? So there's a lot of opportunity to synchronize those with co-browsing with the call or with a video call or whatever else. So you can start to kind of create one experience. But also when we launch chat for a lot of brands, we know that people are actually within the store using the chat service. So we start to look at things like QR codes so they can get to a contextual chat about the item in the store specifically. So they're going to use chat, but we actually join those physical and digital experiences together with a lot more context, and that affords you the opportunity to say, hey, that's in stock or it isn't, or whatever else, would you like some help with that, and actually call on someone, for example. So there's a lot of opportunity by looking at these sort of channels, not in isolation, but together, and breaking down those silos, I think.
Well, let's do this. We're going to have to probably do a round two, folks, because we didn't get to fraud, we didn't get to video, we didn't get to social, we weren't able to get to in-store delivery pickup and all of that. But at the end of the day, let's wrap up on this, and I'll stay a few extra minutes if you guys can, and an audience wants to ask a couple of questions, because I understand the time. Jim and Seb, what have we really been talking about here today? And I'll give you some examples, and what's kind of your viewpoint, and maybe even kind of still keeping you up at night. So for example, labor's labor. It's always going to be a unique way we've got to look at, we've got to get creative, we've got to go from there. We've been talking about a little bit about knowing the personalization, using AI, how AI fits into that intent and prediction in personalization. We've talked about ease of use for consumers and channels of choice, and kind of meeting them where they need to be met at. But at the end of the day, Jim, we're trying to figure out still a lot of things, right? And in your viewpoint, what is that conversation we still need to get right as a group of brands when we think about some of the elements we discussed today, and that you'd like to advocate to this audience today?
So I think go ahead, Seb. Was it?
No, after you, Jim.
Okay,
Please.
Sorry. I think if I was to just sum it up really fast for me, there's a couple things. One, it's leading your customers, not forcing them, is one key. The other piece is not chasing in the industry, but actually innovating, like actually putting forth experiences that are differentiations for your customer. And then the last thing I think that we really need to get right, that we struggle with all the time, is delivering consistent and scalable experiences. It's one thing to have a brilliant, magical moment for one customer through one agent, through one digital experience, but to be able to do it at scale and make that magic happen every single time is something we continually need to push on. And those would be the three for me.
I just build on that last point first, Jim. I mean, the industry talked about delighting your customers or not doing that for a long time, right? Those single moments of truth for a very few customers. If you want to affect real change, it's that consistent, maybe less sort of, super out there kind of experiences, but done at scale, which actually, generate real change both for customers and the business as well. For me, I think a lot of the underlying kind of points are, staying focused on the North Star, which is, customers want the easy experience and friction is the enemy here, right? So most of the types of capabilities or solutions from personalization and whatever else are really focused on making that ease of use go up. And we talked very earlier on about sort of the agile approach to doing that, right? Having that sort of future focused on removing friction, and it's a work of day by day struggle to kind of find that friction, get data to reinforce the hypothesis about whether it really is there for the customer or not, and then affect some change to remove it from the process. And I think that's what this is all really about, and staying focused on that is pretty key to the whole thing.
Keep our heads high, keep the goal there. We have a lot more that we continue to talk about. I hope the community will come and join us in San Diego at our next live gathering, October 24th and the 26th. Ricardo, Jim, Heather, Seb, if you could stay with me just for a couple extra minutes. If the audience, a smaller group, would like to stay on just to ask a couple of questions, we'll do that. But I do recognize that we've hit our time limit of 60 minutes. On behalf of myself, Chad McDaniel, Execs in the Know, thank you for doing what you do. You keep customer number one. We really appreciate your listenership. Have a great rest of your day. For those that'll conclude our session. For those that would like to stay on and ask a couple quick questions, we'll do that. And we'll keep everyone informed on our next gathering. Thank you again so much, team, for your time.